Shalom everyone, good morning, Shavua Tov. It's wonderful to be with you once again this week as we continue with a special course that we started last week for Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers. I apologize for coming on 2 minutes late. It's just because the device that I was using was not connecting, and now I was able to get, Baruch Hashem, another device. Thank you very much to Mordechai and Raya for hosting this class and so many of the other classes that we have over here, and a couple of special announcements that I would like to mention. First of all, tomorrow evening, we're going to start for the first time in over a year to have our Tuesday night classes in person for those that have a green pass, and also online. So, Bezrat Hashem, everyone will be able to benefit. It's going to be only on Zoom. And then afterwards, it will be broadcast, Bezrat Hashem, through Facebook and YouTube on the Chabad Rechavia channel. And I'm very excited to inform everyone the next announcement, and that is that the perfect response to the act of hate that was done against Chabad of Rechavia several days ago, we are going to counter that act through bringing light to the world in a very meaningful way, and that is we're going to be writing a new Torah over here in Rechavia, which will bring unity amongst all of us. Everyone will be able to participate in the writing of this Torah, and also will bring Shmirah, a special guardianship from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, guarding everyone and protecting everyone. All of us over here in Rechavia, Nachlaot, Jerusalem, Israel, and in the entire world. Very soon, Bezrat Hashem today, we're going to be sending out the advertisement and the flyer that we're going to be starting to write this new Torah this coming Sunday. We're not waiting too much time. It just takes a few days to put everything together. We already have almost everything in place. And as I said, we're going to be starting to write a new Torah. We're going to start writing it right outside Chabad of Rechavia, right near where the individual tried to spray an unknown chemical to, God forbid, hurt someone. Baruch Hashem, we had great miracles, and this is a great way to thank Hashem and to get rid of the darkness. You're all invited. Sunday at 4 o'clock right here outside Chabad. Last week, we gave you the introduction for Pirkei Avot, and also we started Perek Aleph, Mishna Aleph, the first half of the first Mishnah in the first chapter. Now we're going to continue, so you can look at your text, whether it's online or it's in many of your Sidurim. It is also an hour in the Chabad Siddur, in the English Siddur, page 271, I believe. And now we're going to continue to the next part of the Mishnah. Haim Amru Shlosha Devarim. The Mishnah begins by telling us how Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah, the tablets, and then afterwards the Torah on Har Sinai from Hashem. And then he passed on the Torah to Yehoshua, and Yehoshua to the Zekanim, the elders, and the Zekanim to the Nevi'im, the prophets. And the prophets passed on the Torah to the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, to the men of the great assembly. Okay, sounds great. Now, the Mishnah is going to tell us 3 major statements that the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah made. And it's not just statements, because they probably made many more than just 3. These 3 statements are going to be something that we can learn from. As we talked about last week, and we're probably going to be mentioning this several times throughout this course of the Pirkei Avot. That Pirkei Avot is not here to teach us a specific mitzvah per se. Rather, it's here to teach us lifnim mishurat hadin, beyond the letter of the law, midat hachasidut, how to be a chassid, how to be extra careful in your observance of mitzvahs and learning Torah. So what does the Mishnah say? Let's take out the siddur. The Mishnah says as follows. Hevu metunim badin. You, plural, you should be deliberate in judgment. Number 2, v'ha'amidu talmidim harbe. And you should have many students. And finally, number 3, va'asu siyag la Torah. And you should make a quote-unquote fence for the Torah. Let's explain in the most simple level what these mean, and then we'll try to go a little deeper. Hevo mitunim badin. You should be deliberate in judgment. What does that mean? That means that you should be considerate. If you are a rabbi or a judge on the Beit Din, you should be understanding. Someone that comes and asks you a question, you should answer the question in a soft tone, in an understanding way, and the person should feel like $1 million. A person should feel that their question is very, very precious, is very, very worthwhile, and they should want to ask again. You see, one of the most fundamental concepts of Judaism is to know, to feel comfortable to ask a question. Some people feel that maybe it's embarrassing to ask a question. Maybe the question is so obvious that maybe someone will laugh at me for asking such a question. God forbid. There's a story told about the former chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu of blessed memory, a very, very special man, a great Kabbalist, and a huge admirer of the Rebbe. He met the Rebbe several times. And Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu was once here in Yerushalayim. His yeshiva was right here in Kiryat Moshe. And not that he was once in Yerushalayim, but once he was going on some kind of trip, or he's going to maybe to speak somewhere, to visit someone. And he came with his whole entourage. And somebody approached Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu, and he said to him, like as he was walking on the way, I believe the question is, what bracha do you say on a banana? So some of the people tried to shun the person away. What are you bothering the rabbi for? As if to say, in middle, while he's walking, he's going to some kind of shir or some kind of meeting. And anyways, the question is such a simple question. Avi, it's Barei Pri Adama. I'm not sure if they expressed this, but that was the atmosphere. That was the message that they were projecting. And immediately Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu turned to the person and said, what an amazing question you asked. There are different opinions in halacha. Practically, the halacha is that we say Barei Pri Adama, but if you call me tomorrow at this number in my office, we can discuss the background of these details of the different opinions, and Bezrat Hashem will be able to come to a complete and final, stable halachic opinion. Halachic ruling. This is an amazing example of a great Rav that made a person who was such a simple person, he didn't know what bracha to make on a banana. But he made him feel like $1 million, like he was worth something, like he asked, as if he asked the best question in the world. It really was. On a certain level, it was really a great question. Now, you might ask, perhaps this message of the Mishnah applies only to someone who's a rabbi or someone who is a judge on the Beit Din. But how about a regular person? A good person leads their own life. What is this message of the Mishnah? Hevu mitunim badin. You should be deliberate in judgment. And the answer is that every single person in your own lives is a leader. Everyone is a leader. Whether it means you're the leader of your family, or it means the leader of your business, or you volunteer in the hospital to help people. Everyone can be a leader. Everyone should be a leader. And in a sense, everyone is a leader in your own lives. And when you're a leader, when you take on a leadership role, just by default, people turn to you. People seek it. Excuse me, please. People seek advice. People seek counsel, whether in a Torah setting or in a worldly setting. But the Torah also is a guide for us in our worldly day-to-day manners. So if you're a leader and people come to you, you are in some way, shape, or form, you're a judge. You are a guide. You're a leader. And so we need to know how to be a leader. We need to be very thoughtful. We need to be understanding of a person who comes to us. We have to greet people with a smile. Explain to them how great of a question they have, or if they have a suggestion or a compliment. What a brilliant idea you've had. Thank you for sharing it with me. Now I'm wiser than I was before, thanks to your advice. You don't know how much you can contribute to a person's meaning in this world. Some people feel that they have no meaning. You know, the person that's approaching us is going through. And sometimes greeting someone with a smile, and I have to mention the contrary. If someone does not greet someone with a smile, only being stern and tough, God forbid what it can bring to. So that's the lesson of the Mishnah. Hevu mitunim badin. We should be deliberate, and we should be thoughtful and caring. That's point number one. Point number two, v'ha'amidu talmidim harbe. You should have many students. What does that mean, you should have many students? If you are a leader, you are a Rabbi, a teacher, whether in Torah or otherwise, you should have many students. Now, the question I'm going to ask is an interesting question. One of the famous subjects that are discussed in the Torah, in Yiddishkeit, across the board, is the question is, what is more important? Is eichut or kamut? Quality or quantity? So usually when we explain the importance of meaning and substance to the mitzvahs that we do, what is the answer? Quality. Quality is something which is, you can even do a little bit of quantity, but if it's full of kavanah and intention and meaning, then usually we say that the quantity is less relevant. And what do we see over here? V'ha'amidu talmidim harbe. You should have many students. 1 second. Why is it so important to have many students? Shouldn't the Mishnah just say, even if you have one student, then you've accomplished a tremendous amount, which is true? What's this idea of harbe, many? Why is that even important? Why is that even quoted in the text over here? And the answer is that to explain to us that quality is important is almost superfluous. We know that. And in many parts of the Torah, this point is elaborated upon. That's fine. That's a given. How about the concept of quantity? How about the amount of mitzvahs that we do? Is that also important? Let me give you an example of one of the Mishnahs towards the end. It's also in Pirkei Avot, but it's towards the end of chapter 3, I believe. Yes. The end of Mishnah 15, Tetvav, the Mishnah says, V'hakol lefi rov ha'maaseh. And all is according to how much is being done. So for example, the Alter Rebbe explains over here in this Mishnah, he explains that if a person gives tzedakah, and you want to give 10 shekels, so if you give 10 individual shekel coins to 10 different institutions or 10 different times, then it's even a greater mitzvah than giving it at one shot. So for example, you're standing by davening and you want to give tzedakah. So you have the pushka, the tzedakah box, kupat tzedakah in the middle of the table. So instead of giving, just as an example, 10 shekels and one shot, you can give 2 shekels before davening. Because before davening, that's very special. It says Rabbi Elazar would first give a coin to tzedakah, to a poor person, and then he would daven. So I'm just giving you an example. You give a few shekels before davening. Then a few shekels when you say, Poteach et yadecha umasbia l'chol chai ratzon. We ask Hashem to open His hands, so to speak, and satiate every living being, according to Hashem's will. That's a great time to give tzedakah. Then you give another few shekels. Another few shekels, v'ha'osher v'ha'kavod mefanecha. That the wealth and the honor is for Hashem. Another great time to give tzedakah. Poteach et yadecha later on in the davening, once again. So it's just an example of where spreading out the giving of the tzedakah, you can give it to the same place, but in the more the merrier, or not even spreading it out. You can even do one after the other. 1 shekel, another shekel, another shekel. I'm not in any way putting down, giving 10 shekels or $1 million or $1 billion. It's just that there is something special. That's the point that I'm trying to bring out now. There is something special about quantity. And what is special about quantity? That we see in a few weeks in the Parsha. We're going to read about Bamidbar in the New Chumash, in the book of Numbers. Numbers? Why is numbers important? Isn't it important only the quality? Who cares how many numbers there are? But Hashem counts Am Yisroel time and time again to indicate and to bring out, to magnify this beautiful concept that it's not only about quality, it's also about quantity. What happens when you count something? What happens when you count someone? We don't count people by numbers. We learned from David the Melech that unfortunately he did count his people, and there was unfortunately a plague that came as a result. So instead of saying 1, 2, 3, 4, when you're counting for a minyan, for example, you say there's a verse with 10 words. Hoshia et amecha uvarech et nachlatecha or emenas'eim ad ha'olam. So it's a good way to count, and by the end of the day you're counting. So you count and you say, Hashem says, he wants to know, so to speak, how many Jews we are. Now, Hashem knows without counting. What's the idea of counting? Counting is magnifying the importance of every single individual. So on one hand, we say, I'm only one, I'm only a little guy. You have the whole nation, Yisroel, but I'm only one little detail. Comes along Hashem and says, no, you're not only one little detail. You are one unit. You are such a special individual. You're amazing. You are an important entity. It's not something that we should go around bragging with, but between Hashem and us, Hashem knows us more than anyone else. Hashem shows us, I have one Jew, a second, a third, a fourth, until Hashem counted the hundreds and thousands. Baruch Hashem, Ken Yerbu at the time was between the ages of 20 and 60, but that was the concept of counting. So from here we learn that v'ha'amidu talmidim harbe. There should be many students. It's not enough to have one student. It's wonderful, it's great, but it's not enough. If you have a chance to have a second student, and the third, and the fourth, and advertise, and make the shiur as great as possible, as large as possible, and tomorrow night, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll have a lot of people joining us, halavai, in person for our class, within the regulations and the restrictions of the Ministry of Health. Wow, it's even a greater and a greater mitzvah. We've seen this in the past year plus, when if beforehand we had a share of 5 or 10 or 15, which was amazing, or 1, all of a sudden we have Baruch Hashem tens of people in every share. That's called v'ha'amidu talmidim harbe. Once again, what is the message to a regular person who is not a quote-unquote leader or teacher? Every one of us has something to contribute to the world that no one else in the world has. And we have an obligation to create students, to publicize, to spread the word of Hashem, to teach people. As the Rebbe said often, including in his first public talk being the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he said, if you know an aleph, you teach an aleph. If you know a bet, you teach a bet. And I'm going to add to that, if you know a page of Tanya, you teach a page of Tanya. If you know a Dvar Torah for the Parsha of the week, or you want to send around a video, a short video, do that, because you can impact someone even if you can't teach yourself. The fact itself that you're spreading the word and you're publicizing it, you're sharing it with others, that itself is extremely helpful to do v'ha'amidu talmidim harbe. And then finally, the final message of the Mishnah is va'asu siyag la Torah. You should make a fence for the Torah. What is this idea of being a fence? So the idea is that when the Torah tells us that we should be careful not to do A, B, or C, so you can either just make sure not to do it, or you put a fence not even to come close to it. So for example, if the mitzvah is not to write on Shabbat, so the Chachamim say, our sages teach us, not even to touch the pen, because the pen is muktzah. Muktzah means it's set aside, it's out of bound. Don't even touch it. If you don't touch the pen, you won't come to write. So our sages helped us in this process of being able to create for ourselves boundaries and borders. And besides and beyond the literal translation when it comes to doing mitzvahs and learning Torah, that we should protect ourselves. What does it mean? What can we take from this in our day-to-day lives? What we can take from this is that we should create borders and parameters for ourselves. No one is allowed to trust themselves. We'll learn about that, B'ezrat Hashem, also later on in Pirkei Avot, in the later chapters. That no one can say that they are protected and they have a green pass, so to speak, quote unquote, and they're all taken care of. Every single human being is subject to tests and challenges from Hashem. Hopefully light tests, but nonetheless tests. And therefore, we have to realize that we have to put for ourselves boundaries and parameters in order to distance ourselves, God forbid, from doing anything wrong. So like the example that I've said recently in the past, which is, I cannot stress it enough, that when it comes to today with the outburst of technology and social media, we must have filters, and videos is also a good thing to have. You have a video, your computer, it's good to have it in a place that everybody can see what's going on the computer. All these little tips that will only help us out. It will help us be better people, more connected to Hashem, and further away from the negativity of the world. Thank you so much for joining us. Bezrat Hashem, tomorrow morning we'll continue to learn a fascinating interpretation into these three messages from the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. And then on Wednesday, Bezrat Hashem, we'll continue with Mishna Bet, the second Mishnah of chapter 1 in Pirkei Avot. Let me remind you that tomorrow night, Tuesday night, we're starting a new course, Tuesday Tanya. The course is called Letters of the Alter Rebbe. Very fascinating subjects that the Alter Rebbe wrote in his letters. Many of them were written to Eretz Yisroel, so they're strongly connected with Eretz Yisroel. And if you can come in person, that would be wonderful, if you have the green pass. And if not, stay at home and on Zoom. It will be only on Zoom probably, maybe also on Facebook Live. But as we start getting into things, Bezrat Hashem, we'll get more and more up to date on these matters. Thank you so much. Have a great week and a great day.